Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're having a think about this great song, Killing Me Softly. Well, how many songs have been written over the years? Too many to count. But why is it that some songs just kind of have their moment and disappear? Other songs never get anywhere at all. Other songs really make it to number one and then stick. This is one of those. Number one in the US in 1973, and for Grammy Awards, all the rest of it. Sung by a number of different people. Perhaps the Roberta Flack is the most well-known version of it. I don't know, you might have others you prefer. So in this video, we're just going to have a look at it and think, well, what is it about this song that means that it's had that kind of success and it's got a kind of longevity of success? While other songs just haven't made it or have been a success and it's been a flash on the pan, they've all disappeared, never to be heard again. And this has become a bit of a standard. So let's have a little look at its design and see if there's anything in the music that's got anything to tell us. Well, first of all, interesting with the kind of key situation. I mean, this version happens to be in 4 flats. I mean, it could be transposed into any key, of course. But if you've got 4 flats, you're thinking really A flat major, F minor, whatever. Okay, this would have an intro on it, wouldn't it? But it actually starts on a B flat minor 7 chord, which is a bit intriguing because if you're in the key of F minor, well, that's a kind of subdominant 7th, a 4/7. If you're in A flat major, it's a 2/7, a supertonic 7th. So it's a slightly unusual chord on which to begin, because how many songs do you know that just start on a tonic chord? If you're an A flat major, you start on an A flat major chord. So that's quite interesting in itself, actually, just what happens if you start on some other chord. So what have we got? We've got B flat minor 7, and then we've got this move of the bass going down a 5th from there, and then quite a rich chord, because having had an extension chord to a 7th there, then we get an E flat 9 chord. So very kind of rich, warm harmony. And of course, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Even in the title, you've got these lyrics, killing softly. I mean, it's kind of feels like a contradiction, doesn't it? But actually, how do you get some killer chords, but done in a sort of softly kind of way? Well, it's kind of like quite interesting feature of this, isn't it? So that B flat minor 7 going down a 5th in the bass, then the E flat 9. Then of course that resolves onto A flat, in this case, A flat 7. All these 7th chords and 9th chords are really adding warmth to the harmony. They're kind of doing the softly stuff, aren't they? So harmonically then, when we get to the 3rd measure, the 3rd bar, are we now in the home key? So are we really in A flat major? So B flat 7 or 2/7, and then E flat 9 or 5/9, and then 1/7. Is that where we are? Or are we really in F minor? It's still not entirely clear, is it? But interesting, that movement down a 5th and then claiming back to the A flat. It's kind of pushing us towards the A flat. So you have this sense of resolution into A flat in the 3rd bar. And I think that's quite a nice, clever touch. It's not unusual to use a supertonic 7th followed by a dominant 9th followed by a tonic chord. Nothing unusual about that. But maybe what's slightly unusual is not kind of getting to that tonic chord until the 3rd bar, the 3rd measure. So I think that's something that just adds a bit of magic. And then what do we do after that? Well, having got the A flat in 3, we then go down a 5th again to D flat 7. So this idea we had of falling a 5th, now we're doing the same again. We're falling another 5th. And then what are we doing? Well, we're doing the same thing again, because we're going B flat minor 7 and falling a 5th. So we've got an awful lot of this falling 5th thing. And of course, you notice that the chords, when we get into this corner, 5 and 6, are exactly the same chords as we had there. So kind of revisiting those initial chords, you know, and we'll talk about the melody being revisited and then modified in a moment. But you see what's going on with the chord pattern. And then having persuaded ourselves that we really are an A flat major, well, then we hit 7 and we've got an F minor chord. And that's actually quite a kind of stopping point in the music. You know, this is actually quite a significant cadence, isn't it? You know, you've got a long vocal note followed by a couple of rests before we move on. So we've ended up with F minor. So we're still puzzling over this thing. Are we really in the key of A flat major, or why are we kind of messing about here with F minor? So it could be that this is an interrupted cadence going from chord 5 to chord 6, the dominant to the submedian chord in A flat major, or it could be that this is an attempt to kind of pull us around to a bit of F minor thinking. What's good about it is in the hands of Charles Fox, the writer of this thing, he's just kind of keeping us guessing a bit. Okay, what happens next? Well, when we go to these next two measures, 9 and 10, we've got the same two chords again. You notice how we had at the beginning B flat minor 7, E flat 9, we had it again 5 to 6, and now we've got it again. So it's kind of like keeps coming back, doesn't it? This B flat minor 7, E flat 7 or E flat 9, and you'll notice again we've got it kind of coming back. So it's a kind of like a kind of signature progression that keeps featuring. Okay, and again we've got this progression here that goes on to A flat again, which is kind of what it did there. Then he makes a move. So having kind of gone round this corner to A flat, then we make a move to F minor. So all this kind of umming and ahhing about A flat major, F minor. So from the beginning, B flat minor 7, E flat 9, A flat 7, D flat 7, B flat minor 7, E flat minor 9, F minor, and then we go around again. B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat, but now we get a move. So C7 is a real shot in the back, isn't it, when you get to measure 12, and you really kind of feel that in the song. There's a real kind of push forwards, and then we go on to F minor. So this is a dominant seventh to a tonic chord in F minor. So we've really have gone into F minor there. There's been a key movement. What happens immediately after that? Look at this. The same three chords again. So B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat 7. So we're back on that game again. See how he keeps kind of coming back. So that gives it a real kind of cohesion, doesn't it? From the beginning all the way up to measure 16. That we've got this three chord trick that keeps coming round. But that push into F minor really kind of lifts the game a bit there, doesn't it? Okay, now what's going on melodically while all that's happening? Well, you know, here's our kind of first melodic statement. And it's got a kind of shape of its own. It starts here and it climbs by step. And then we kind of settle for the second half of the phrase doing something slightly different. So the first half of the phrase, climbing by step. Second half of the phrase starts and finishes on E flat, and we go down a fourth and come up again. So that interval, this fourth, breaks the otherwise conjunct movement. Okay, then we get this bit that kind of flows on from it. Now, what's that doing? Coming down a scale and then followed by a fourth. Well, does that sound a bit familiar? At the beginning, we were going up a scale by a fourth. Now we're coming down a scale by a fourth. Same notes, but just done the other way around. And we had this fourth interval we talked about here. And guess what? Here's a fourth interval here. So there's quite a connection being made there, isn't there? Okay, well, what happens next? Oh, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because this is an exact repeat of what we did at the beginning. But the first time it did this, but this time it's doing this. So the phrase kind of extends, you get an extra bar, so phrase extension, making that kind of grow and last for longer. And also it's kind of pushing us on to a new place. You know, when we hear the beginning of that, we think, oh, it's going to be the same as the first phrase. Lots of songs would do that. They just go back and repeat the same thing again. This one moves on. And we had this kind of rising thing. You know, we've got this, Then we've got ti-di, and then ta-da-da, moving us up, and then we peak on this A flat at the beginning of measure 7, before we're kind of coming down the scale again and arriving back on F. And then we talked about this F minor thing. Well, there's the note F just kind of centering us that for a little bit for us. Okay, well then something kind of new then kicks off. We've seen how those previous phrases relate, but now what you notice here is up at the beginning we had conjunct movement followed by the disjunct movement. Here we've got disjunct movement followed by conjunct movement, so he's reversed it all by step from this point onwards. And then where do we go from here? Well, then we've got this little corner, haven't we? Well, what is that? Musically, it's a kind of link, isn't it? You know, that's our little link that's taking us from where we've been to where we're going. And it's quite chromatic, repeated notes, but then going up chromatically, repeating, going up chromatically, but then a whole step at the end of all that, or a tone at the end of that. And then we get into this new section of the song, don't we? Where we feel like, aha, we're now in a new place. So what's going on here? And what you've really got here is this statement, which features some of what we've seen before, like repeated notes. We've seen them before. We've got this falling third, falling fourth. Well, okay, it's rising thirds. We've seen a bit of that going on earlier on in the song as well, haven't we? But this has got an essentially new character. The repeated notes at the head of this phrase make it sound unlike the other phrases, which for the most part were moving on. This is kind of a lovely phrase, isn't it? But then it's used in sequence. It's not an exact sequence at the end, but certainly the head of it is when we're going as far as there, everything is just a note lower than it was, and then it's just got a slightly different ending to it. Okay, well, where do we go from that point with the song? Well, when we come to the next phrase, you notice how these repeated notes are still with us. And they're still with us in the next bar. And they're still with us here. And they're still with us here. So the repeated note then becomes a kind of major feature melodically. And you see what's happening after the repeated notes. Well, where we go up a sort of F minor chord, just spelling out the chord, and then we come down there again, repeated notes, and then down the scales, that's similar. And then repeated notes, moving down again, and this is similar to what we had a moment ago. So you notice even the bit that connects the repeated notes. We had this bit, didn't we? And now we've got this bit. It's the same kind of figure with that initial interval modified. And then repeated notes again, ta-da-dee-doo, and then going by step to the end of it. So we can see what the design is from this point. It's a slightly different design from the first half of the song. But you see how things hold together. In the second half of what we've got here, the repeated note thing is quite cohesive, isn't it? It keeps coming up. But we have enough variety from that also to kind of break what could become a bit too predictable. Well, we talked up to measure 16 with the chords. Let's go back to chords in measure 17. Well, what do we got? We've got F minor again, then we've got B flat and E flat. Well, we've met that B flat thing before, but notice before we've been meeting B flat minor. Every time B flat's been coming round, which has happened many a time now, it's been B flat minor, whether it's the 7th or not. Now notice what happens when we get down to 18 is it becomes B flat major. So F minor, then B flat major. Gives us a kind of new twist. So have we gone to B flat major? I don't think we have. because that A flat then is followed by an E flat major chord. So we've probably gone from the dominant chord to the tonic chord in E flat major there. So there's a bit of key movement here. And that B flat major chord is kind of like a light switching on after all those B flat minor chords, isn't it? And then after that, you think, okay, so we're in E flat major now, are we? Well, not really, not for long, because the next chord is D flat major. So we've had B flat major, E flat major, then just slipping down a tone to D flat major. And then we're back on A flat 7 again. And then we go back to D flat. So we're thinking, what's going on with the key now? Is it A flat major? Is it F minor? What's going on? But then there's a lovely twist at the end of this song, because just when you think you're trying to work out D flat, A flat, D flat, what does that really mean? A flat major, F minor, what does it mean? Then we get G flat 7, perhaps the most surprising chord in the whole song. And then we get this lovely finish to F major. So you're sort of beginning to think, well, I don't know if it's A flat major or F minor, and the G flat 7 pulls us away from both. But actually, then we end up with this F major finish, which is great because it sort of feels like, well, it could have been F minor, but then the F major is a kind of like a tierce de Picardy when you're in a minor key, but the last tonic chord is major. So that's how that works out. There's also a lot of rhythmic character in this. Of course, it depends how you decide to perform the rhythm, but all the syncopated rhythm gives it a lot of character. And so on. That's going all the way through, isn't it? And that's a nice contrast with, which is just breaking the cycle of that syncopation at the heads of phrases as well. So all sorts of things going on in the music. I mean, some people will find this over analytical, and you might, if you really want to enjoy the song, obviously you enjoy it at an emotional level. You just absorb it and it affects you as it does. You might find looking at the words, you might be thinking, well, why are we not talking more about how the words are being painted? That's another angle we could have taken on this. But what I'm trying to do is to be quite analytical on purpose, just to say, well, what is it about the construction of the melody, how the harmony works, what's going on with the key, the ambiguities, what are the things that stitch the whole thing together, because there are certain cohesive things that come round. What are the things that give us variety? What are the kind of things that set up to be an aural expectation, like the B flat minor 7, E flat 9, A flat 7? What are the things that take us by surprise, like G flat 7 F at the end? And how all of that combines to kind of give you a song that's got something original to say. It's not just another standard song doing many of the same tricks that we've heard a million times before. It's actually saying something kind of quite distinctive in its own way. It's got some very clever touches. And that maybe is a clue to answering our question. How come it made #1 in the US in 1973? How come it made its appearance at the Grammys? How come it's a song that's still performed these days? It's got that longevity factor. So there it is, Killing Me Softly. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, you might like to go and have a look at what's on offer on our website, www.mmcourses.co.uk, where you'll be able to read blogs, find reference to all of our online courses. And the point about the online courses is that unlike all the videos we've got on the YouTube that are all one-offs, the courses are kind of A to Z, taking you through a real kind of course of instruction and kind of hands-on stuff that will help you really get to grips with your theory, harmony, oral training, analysis skills, whatever it is that you're looking for. So have a look and see what the courses are that may be of interest to you. And while you're on the homepage, just have a click on Maestros that will tell you about our global musical community. All sorts of fun things, emojis, badges, behind the scenes content, that kind of stuff. But also discounts available on our courses, and you'll be able to take part in our monthly live streams. 2 of those each month. The first one is kind of, pretty solid teaching input from me on some aspect that's often been suggested by members of the group. Very happy to respond to topics that people want to raise. And we've got the time just to really go to town on some details about a composer, analysing a piece of music, some kind of compositional skill, whatever it is we're going at that particular month. And then the second live stream, where you can submit your own compositions, your own recorded performances, theory exercises, harmony exercises, whatever you want really. And I'll do my best to give you some quality personal evaluation and feedback. And throughout this live stream process, we've got a live chat running so people can ask questions, make comments, and all in all, it's a great mutual learning opportunity. And one thing that many of our members say, they're all lovely people by the way, is that they quite often find that they're on this sort of lonely journey and not really quite sure how what they're doing fits in with what other people are doing. And this is a very supportive community, and they suddenly realise there are plenty of other people out there dealing with the same successes, the same challenges, and that we can all share, learn from each other. And it's a great thing to be a part of. So if that's for you, have a look at Maestros and find out all the detail of what that's all about. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed what we've done in the video today, and we look forward to seeing you again.